Hey everyone, welcome to the Oasis podcast. I'm your host, Miss AJ. Thanks for tuning in. An oasis is something that provides refuge, relief, or a pleasant contrast, and that is exactly what you will find tuning into the Oasis podcast. This is a space where I and special guests will be cultivating intentional and honest conversations about life's journey. Subscribe everywhere you listen to podcasts and watch us on YouTube now.
So, how many of us have them? Who here has friends? Hopefully, we all have friends, but who here has known people since their childhood?
Yep. Yep.
I can't even say that anymore. I can't even say that anymore. I don't have any childhood friends, not anymore. How about someone that you've known about half your life?
Me too. Yep.
No, I don't have that either. No. So how about 5-10 years? I got that. Yeah, that I got. So starting out this conversation, I want us to, again, this is a conversation, y'all. I want y'all to jump in, say what you have to say, express your thoughts and your feelings. Like what Tayllor mentioned, this was something that was brought up in a previous Sisterhood Saturday. And we were talking about joy. And I forget exactly how the topic came up, but friendship popped in. And we had so many different thoughts that popped up about friendships. And it was like, oh man, we have to talk about this. And it's something that I always wanted to talk about. Honestly, I've had on my list of talks for the podcast. And we decided to join together. And why not in this space have this conversation? For me, in my journey, as I've grown to become a woman, I feel that friendships have been one of those difficult things to navigate. And again, while we're having conversations, I'll throw in some things that have occurred for me. But as I mentioned, I don't have any friendships that I've had since I was a child. Those friendships have fizzled out, right? Like they kind of, went about their business, I guess you can say. We had the time together and then, we parted ways. But I know for a lot of people, friendships are having long lasting friendships are essential, right? They're important. The longer, the realer, the better, right? And whereas for other people, you can meet somebody tomorrow and they're your friend. That's my best friend. That's my best friend. And they can operate in that space. Now, I want to ask you all of us are in different walks of life and we do different things. And we're in different careers. We're at different points in our lives. Where did you get your messages about friendship? Because I think we don't really talk about that. Because I think it's integral to kind of how we function in friendships.
It's a very good question. TV. It had to be TV. I wasn't even allowed to watch TV, but I remember watching, what's that show? Here is Ginger or some show on Nickelodeon and there was Best Friends in High School. And I think a lot of my information early on came from TV. I thought about that, but yeah, came from TV.
Yeah, I think TV was a lot of our first teachers. Our parents had to work. We learned a lot about family. We learned about relationships and friendships on TV. Yeah, for sure.
I think for me, it was my parents and my grandparents, especially my grandmother. During the week, I stayed with my grandparents and, my grandmother will always instill those messages in me, Kaida, she used to say, learn when to wag your tail and when to keep it still. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So learn when to talk and learn when to be quiet, And she said, you may know a lot of people, but it's very few people that you really are going to consider them to be your friend. And I think oftentimes, what I instill in my kids is, separating the differences between friends and acquaintances, So that was my journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody else want to join in?
Yeah, I thank you for sharing that. Similar to what your grandmother taught you, my mom would always say, you are judged by the company you keep. And, as a child, I'm like, what are you talking about? I have no idea. But it was very interesting because I was very introverted as a child. In my own healing journey, I understand why I wasn't necessarily a very shy child that just came out of the experiences that I had as a child. And so friendship really was shaped differently for me in that way. And I did also understand really early on the difference between someone who was your friend and someone who was an acquaintance. Like I often say, oh, that's a friend that I know, my running friend or my travel friend. But my true like bonds that I have with women, I can count on one hand how many I have. And so it really sort of helps to shape expectations and build boundaries around relationships.
Thank you for saying that. We're actually going to touch up on that for sure. And I'm not sure if anybody else wants to jump in, but I'll jump in. Actually, my first messages about friendship weren't positive. Like my mother and my sister were the first two people who, you know, kind of mentioned friendships to me. In my mind, it was just like, you have friends and, you know, people that you know are your friends. And they're like, no. My mother's messaging was, you don't need friends, we your friends, right? So family, your friends, that's it. And the other side of the messaging, my sister would tell me, because she, you know, my sister's 6 years older than me. So, you know, we were in different stages of life. So she would, I guess, based on her experience, she'll be like, oh, your friend, your best friend today could be your enemy tomorrow. I remember those two things very distinctively. And I used to be like, what? But my friends we have fun together, we laugh. What are you talking about? And it wasn't, again, until I got older that it made sense. But there was always something in me when I was younger that I really always really valued friendships. Like it was like, you're my friends, I'm here for you, you got to be here for me too, right? Like this is how it's going to be. And there was always something in me that wanted friendships, because I think because my mother telling me not to have them probably made me want that. Right. And my sister's messaging, I was just kind of like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, this is my best friend. Nothing like that's ever going to happen. So I wanted to prove them wrong. So it was like kind of, I think something like that always in the back of my mind. So anybody else want to talk about their first messaging about friendships? Like where did the messaging come from? I know we had one new person join. Anybody else want to chime in?
I'll say this. One thing that I remembered is that in middle school, in elementary school, my mom was an educator. So she tried to work in the same district that I went to school in all the time to stay close to us, which was amazing. I didn't think so at the time, but it's amazing that she did that. And one thing that she said to me, being that she was so close, is that, you know, birds of a feather flock together. What people see your friends doing is what you're associated with. And you are a representation of not only yourself, but your family. So I felt this weird legacy thing around my friends where, you know, I felt like they were an extension of like, there was this big like representation. Like I felt like I was like, you have to carry on the legacy. So who you're around, it kind of brings you up or brings you down. I always say in 7th grade, I said the first time we spoke about this, in 7th grade, my mom fired all my friends. One day she just decided all your friends are fired. You have to go get new friends. And I think that is when I, you know, had a more positive experience around friendship, is when my mom was like, you're done. Pick new friends.
We're going to talk about that a little bit later. We're going to talk about people around us who can just see things we just can't see, right? And mamas tend to have that sixth sense. They tend to just know, you know. They tend to know. So today I woke up in the mood to listen to music. So we're going to be listening to some music while we do this, because I like music and I think music sends a lot of messages. And again, a lot of us got messages about friendships from TV. So I'm going to play something else for y'all. See if y'all know this one.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So I love that theme song very much. Well, I played that on purpose, right? Because the next question is, what is friendship made of? In that theme song, it's really brief, but it says, my girlfriends there through thick and thin. My girlfriends there for everything. Is that really what y'all feel friendships should be made of? What are y'all thoughts about what actually are friendships made of for you? What qualities do y'all look for in friendship?
I think the quality I look for in a friendship is honesty, trust, I think an element of vulnerability. I think we are not. I mean, we tend to be in the friendships where it embodies strength, but when it comes to vulnerability, sometimes we just kind of separate and deal with our own stuff before coming back into a friendship. And although it's good and bad, it just gives vulnerability a bad rap in friendships because if we cannot share our true self, our authentic self, then
is that really trust, right?
Is that really trust? Exactly.
I see a hand raised.
Yeah, I think for me, so I want to go back to what Keisha was. Yes, I think it says yeah. Because she, if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, please forgive me. Because what the young lady was just saying, right? And the vulnerability piece for me, when I'm honest, I'm not the most vulnerable in my friendships because of past experiences, right? It's not. So that's the area that I struggle in. But what is friendship made of? For me, the key thing that I look for nowadays is how they are able to show up. Because I know how I show up for my friends, and I don't need it to mirror in the exact same way. But if a person can't show up for me, especially when times get hard, and when I mean show up, never talking about anything with finances, but how you are when things get hard, it's how I'll not judge you, but how I'll move with you moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's real. That is real. And I think speaking to what both of you all said, we want these certain qualities in friendship, but first thing is, do we embody that? Like, do we bring that into the friendship? Because what Keisha mentioned about, trust and honesty, and then, of course, these relationships tend to have a level of strength, but then we want vulnerability, but then we ain't willing to be vulnerable for real. So do we actually trust the other person if we cannot be vulnerable? So that's an important question to ask. And listen, I ain't no judgments here because I'm all these things, and I know I didn't embody these things in my friendships. I know that I wanted these things from people, and I held them to this standard, and I know I didn't provide those things in those friendships. So here's the next thing I wanted to ask. I mean, someone else could jump in if you wanted to answer the question, and then you can probably answer this in addition. That's what you need from a friend. But is there a difference of just having a friend and then having a good friend, right? Like, what makes them different?
I think where I get confused, to kind of touch on both things, is that when I'm the thick and thin, right, part of the song, and being there when they're needed, I think that for me, friendship is made of balance. And where I get very, where I could use kind of some more, where I become deficient in a friendship is because I become that person. Like you said, what makes a good friend? A good friend who's there for you when things get hard. But I'll take that to heart. So I will be there for everything you need, every single crisis. And there's no balance. I become your triage tragedy guru. And that's not friendship.
No, it's not.
Something else completely, which I think we'll touch on later, where I'm just there for you for every single thing. So, I mean, I've had to ask myself, what makes a good friend, and what is a balanced, respectful, reciprocal friendship look like in that?
I saw some head nods and other commentary on what makes a friend a good friend. What makes a friend a best friend? And I got a song for y'all.
So, I really wanted to just I have a couple of thoughts. One, based on the word strength and vulnerability, and the idea and the narrative that Black women are strong Black women, and how that is also a demise for us to be able to actually have real vulnerable connections, intimate connections, because we're supposed to carry everything ourselves and carry, like you were saying, Tayllor, carry everything for others, in detriment to our own health and well-being and needs. within relationships. And, you know, also, I guess it really depends on the nature, the foundation of your friendships, right? You know, there's layers to it. That's what I'm saying. You know, what you expect, you should be able to give and receive. You should be able to show up as you are in all friendships. Like I said, you know, for me, there's there are layers to my friendships. Not everybody that I consider a friend knows everything about me, the ins and outs of my life. That's really a part, whoever is in my intimate circle, and really understanding the difference. So that,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And you just keep segueing for me. Thank you. So all friends are not created equal. Like that's one thing I think if we were told about friends, that I don't think that was added into the mix, that yes, you call that person a friend and that person a friend and that person a friend, but there is a hierarchy of friendship. I don't think we talk about that. Well, all friends are not created equal. So now getting back to, so what makes a friend a best friend? How do you move from the small bucket to the big bucket, right? Like, how do you move from this tier to the next tier? What makes a friend become your best friend? Is it longevity, right? Is it y'all mamas know each other since y'all was, kids? What makes a friend a best friend for you all? How about thinking about it like this? When you were growing up, because I know now as in adulthood, we think about things differently. So growing up versus, let's talk about the growing up piece. Growing up, what made your best friend your best friend?
I was gonna say something. Oh, someone wants to say something first?
No, you could go ahead. I'll go after.
Okay. Thank you. When I met my best friends, it was the longevity piece about it, because they knew me from, you would say, primary age until now. And well, unfortunately one passed, but like until now, they knew the struggles, the challenge, the difficult transitions, as well as the successes that I had in my life from now back then. But it's also the vulnerability to tie back in, because they saw me in those vulnerable moments. So if I was able to trust them being fully myself, and I was able to trust them being fully themselves, I was able to kind of categorize them as my best friend, because they knew my ups and downs. They know when I need to shut down, when I need to reemerge. They knew when things was happening in a pace that was not beneficial for me, but it was also their willingness to call me out on a character flaw that I had.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned some really important things there. Anybody else wanted to jump in?
I know Katanya had a thought.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, looking back, my best friend was kind of based on families being intertwined and, sisters and cousins hanging out with this group of girls, and you become best friend with people that's kind of associated or kind of within your family, per se. And now when I look at it, somebody to be my best friend, loyalty, I need to be able to trust you. I need you to be able to show up for me the way I show up for you. I don't need you to be throwing shade, comparing. So things like that is what I look at now. I don't have a best friend now, because I've learned over the years that what I thought a best friend was not. And also just knowing the importance of having friends in multiple circles. Like you said, everybody don't have to be your best friend. It's okay to have friends in the writing group, friends that does sports, friends to go out to eat with, friends to go shopping with. So
you gotta diversify your portfolio.
Yes.
That part right there. Because I was thinking, what makes a best friend? And there's a synergy that I had with my best friend, and we just clicked on everything.
Yeah.
But I think in the next topic, we're going to discuss why that synergy was there and why that synergy did not go the distance. And I don't have a best friend today. I think diversifying the portfolio, that needs to be a hashtag on friendships. You gotta
Okay.
portfolio.
That's a must. And again, something I don't think that we talk about, right? When we were kids, people didn't bring that up. Oh, you're gonna meet different people and have different types of friendships, and it's all okay. So much emphasis was on a best friend. You gotta have a best friend. And let me tell you something. I was one of those kids. You can't have more than one best friend. It's just me, and it's just you. And that's what you mean you got another best friend? What?
Right.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So that's absolutely important. Again, today I'm a whole different type of person. I look and view my friendships very differently.
Yeah.
But we're talking to why that happens. Like, because I love story time. So we're gonna have time for story time. Mo, I see you raising your hand. Go ahead, girl.
I think to the first question you asked about how I first thought about a best friend was when I was super young in like 6th grade. I remember a young lady and I consider her my best friend, like because we grew up in the same building. My family knew her family, and it was all good until something happened in school. And I looked at her like, oh damn, I thought she's supposed to be my best friend. And that was in 6th grade, but I was confused. I didn't really know what to do with those feelings. Life went on, she went her way, I went mine, and I cultivated different friendships. And two of those I considered best friends, but they both dissolved, right? So I take a lot of time to reflect on things when I part ways with people that I care about. So I think the way I define best friend now is different. I struggle with that term, right? Like I have a friend in my life that by definition, she probably is my best friend, but I struggle with even telling her that, right? Because that's my stuff, because I feel like if I give her that title, what happens if things go left? And yeah, ideally I shouldn't think like that, but experience is your biggest teacher. At least it's been mine, right? So yeah, there's no point. I'm trying to think about how I'm trying to wrap this up. But yeah, like when I think about that part, but also too, when people talk about like they had friends for like decades and stuff, and while I may think it's beautiful, I'm more about the quality of the friendship. But sometimes when I hear about people's friendship for 20 years and the shit that went down, I'm like, y'all still friends? Oh, okay.
Facts.
Yeah.
I was one of those people too, girl. I had, but that's my day one. Oh, that's my friend. And then when I sat back and think about it, or people around me was saying and thinking and saying things, and when I like how you dissolved, because it was a breakup. We're gonna talk about that.
Right.
When it dissolved, and came back, I was just like, ooh, that's some ugly things happened, and I'm like, why was I holding on to that like that?
Right. That's the real question.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And like people don't talk about and one thing that you said, T, that always kept with me from when we had that initial conversation is that people don't talk about the natural ending of friendships. Sometimes they're a breakup, and sometimes they're just naturally, they've ran their course, just like any romantic relationship where it's like, oh, there's really nothing more here. There's no spark. We don't have anything here. And that being okay, this whole like rhetoric around your best friend, your day one, they're through everything. Like I have a friend from elementary school. She is probably my best friend longevity. I've known her for years. I know her in and out. But I also struggle with that term best friend, because every friendship has their own kind of natural order, and sometimes it ends, and that just happens.
Right. So I'm hearing that a lot of us carries some experiences, even a little bit of trauma around having that best friend, right? Having that person who we held in that regard. Because in the reality situation is us giving titles as human beings, titles help us order things in our minds, in our hearts, right? So given that best friend title, and then something happens to a relationship, it does something to us. It does hurt us, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But now let's just look a little deeper into those friendships that we consider were our best friends, or like people we really, really are close to, right? And I purposely asked y'all these questions because I wanted us to dig a little deeper, because I think a lot of times we have people in our lives and we call them our friends and our best friends. We don't even know why. Like we just know, when I'm around this person, it feels good, or we have a good time. or we don't even think about it. We just be like, I just know this person, I've known this person, and this is what we are. And I just want to dive a little deeper because, again, in me dissecting and unpacking some friendships that I've had over these past few years, and actually I had a friendship breakup, and this was a breakup. I had a breakup a little bit earlier this year. It really made me sit back and think about what made me want to be friends with this person, right? Like, what made me, and why does this hurt so much? Why does this hurt so much, right? And yes, friendship breakups are beyond real and we don't talk about, but we definitely gonna talk about that today. But another piece that we don't talk about is the codependency that lives in our friendships. Now sit with that and think about that. Those of us who understand what codependency is, does anyone not understand what a codependency is? Because of course we can always, this is also a learning space. We can also learn something new today. If anyone needs clarity on what codependency is, of course, just chime in. In looking back, especially in the dynamics I had when I was younger, my best friends and I were codependent on each other. Not in a healthy way, right? It was, I run to you when I don't want to deal with something. It was I know you're going to co-sign my nonsense. It was, you know what I mean? It was, oh, you're going to be with the shits. Okay. And was that necessarily what was needed? Was that necessarily what should have gone down? For me, I can answer that and say no. And what I realized was in us not, when the relationship dissolved or when we had a breakup or we just kind of gradually drifted apart, it hurt in a way that didn't make sense to me. And I was just like, what is going on? And I realized and I found myself not being able to honestly function in a particular way because that person wasn't there. I was dependent on that person. I was. And I think that that's something we don't talk about. Like how dependent we are on these people that we call friends, these people that we call best friends. And if you're lucky enough, these people that you can call your sister, right? If y'all get to that point. Does anybody want to talk about that? Anybody want to admit codependency? Because it took me a while to admit it. I didn't want to because can't nobody tell me I had my own mind. Couldn't nobody tell me I wasn't doing things because I wanted to, but people around me saw it. People around us, because even my friend, her family members, other people was just like, oh, y'all little, what's going on? Y'all little too, you know what I'm saying? Y'all little too confused there. There's no separation of your two. Like you guys are too much, like y'all not individuals, like too much, too intertwined. So anybody, want to share their experience, or maybe even if this is the first time you're thinking about it in that way.
I'll give myself up early. That definitely, the one best friend that I had, it was this. It was all of this. Wherever I was, she was. If you asked about her, you was asking about me. If I was going somewhere, she was going somewhere. And once that breakup happened, it was the exact same thing. Same thing. I was like, why am I dreaming about this person? Why do I miss this person? Like we were not doing nothing. We were besties, but this hurts. And my roommate at the time was like, you're grieving.
Yeah.
The grieving process is going to take a long time. And when I sat back and looked at the relationship, it was codependent. I was playing savior. And the part that was the hardest part for me to recognize is that I said yes to a dynamic that worked for me for some time until it didn't work anymore. In the best friendship, I was playing savior. I was feeding my ego by constantly being there for their problems. And who was I doing that for? I had a responsibility in that dynamic. I said yes to the codependency until it didn't work for me anymore.
Yep.
And that's when I realized, oh, I have to change my behavior. And then that friendship ended. And it was just like, what the fuck? Like, what happened? No one talks about friendship breakups. Like nobody, no one prepared me until I was like a year and a half in, and someone said, oh, you've been grieving that friendship and you're going to continue to grieve it. And I was like, fuck.
Well, we're going to talk about that. I see a hand, Mo. We're going to talk about that. We're going to get in that. I see you, Mo. Go ahead.
Yeah, because what both of you shared, it makes sense, right? Because a friendship is like a relationship without that, well, usually without that level of physical intimacy, right? I'm gonna say usually because some people
Right.
friendship,
Yeah.
them lines be getting crossed real quick. So, but but I'm thinking about a last person I consider a really close friend and how things dissolved, and speaking into what Tayllor was saying about how it was super codependent, but how it no longer served me at one point, and when it dissolved, like it really hurt me. Like to this day, I still miss her, but I know why things can't work. Kind of like, you know, with an expert like boyfriend or whatever. It's like, while you may miss somebody, you know why it no longer serves you, right? And it's kind of like that's how I treat my friendships now. Like these are people that I really care about, and it's like while we're not being physically intimate, I'm being intimate with you in a way where I'm sharing my inner, but I'm showing up as my full self. So there is this level of rawness that I'm bringing that I don't bring everywhere I go, right? So I have to be mindful of that. So I think the difference now moving forward is that I have boundaries. So things like where it's like super codependent, I really, when I even feel like that's happening, I kind of remove myself because it kind of makes, not kind of, it makes me very uncomfortable. Not that I don't want to be close, but that of when you see Mo, you see such and such, like, nah, I'm good. Like I'm here, she there, and it's still all love, you know?
Mm-hmm. But I feel like that's also a mindset that comes with age, right? That comes with, of course, experience. But as we get older, we realize the importance of having boundaries, of having, you can still love the heck out of somebody. And that includes family, right? We love our family members. We love, it could be kids, your mama, your sisters, your brother, whomever. We love them. But we also understand to preserve ourselves, there needs to be boundaries. Right. And that doesn't mean that there's less love there.
Right. Because that means there's even more love, because sometimes, and I guess maybe we might probably talk about this as we progress in the conversation, because like with friendships, there needs to be boundaries, but in all ships, right? But right. I think for me, like boundaries are essential because like that's my way of caring for myself, but also loving on the people that I love too, right? Even if they can't understand, it doesn't mean that they shouldn't be there.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Like, y'all understanding the assignment, and I appreciate y'all because y'all coming with it. So we already mentioned us having these experiences, and maybe some of us have been codependent. And then when those codependent relationships or those deep friendships, we can call it dissolve, right? We can call them or we can call them breakups. Me, I like to call it a breakup, because the intensity that I felt in those dynamics that I lost, they felt, if not as rougher than when I had actual breakups for me. And I think that had to do with the level of codependency that I had in my friendships. And one friendship in particular, because I love story time, and so everyone can be free to share stories, of course, leaving names out, right? In a particular friendship I had since middle school up until I was literally months from turning 30 years old. And I was extremely codependent. Like when I tell you, my partners would have issues with this person because whenever I would get into a relationship, she would become more clingy. I didn't see that though. My partners did. My mama did. Other people did. I didn't see it, right? And so when my partners would say something, I'd be like, oh, everyone getting checked. Don't come from my best friend. Don't do that. Don't do that. We're not gonna do that. Okay. And I would check anybody. Anybody can get it from my best friend, right? She said she didn't like somebody, she'll talk crazy to people. And I didn't see that she was kind of like, because it was our codependency, she didn't want anyone to get too close to me. I was her best friend, but she had other best friends, right? Which was mind-boggling in itself. And again, I didn't like it, but I didn't say anything. I was like, all right, whatever. I know where we at, so it's whatever. It doesn't matter, right? But as we got older, as things started happening, I started realizing, like what Taylor's saying, a lot of the times I was always there, but when I needed that person, they were not there. And I mean, like big things, you know what I mean? Big things would happen where I am scared out of my mind or whatever the case is, and they're nowhere to be found, right? And that right there, again, now this is years in the making. I said from about 11, 12 years old till I was 30. It took me a long time. figure this out. And this codependency led us to a breakup. So let's talk about friendship breakups, y'all. I feel that, and we mentioned this a little bit earlier, that we don't talk enough about the heartbreak that comes when our friendships are no longer, right? Oh, we forgot to go into this one, but we could take a little step back. So I found these memes, and again, anytime I put my mind focused on a topic, the universe always sends me things. And this was something that popped up on my social media when I was thinking about, creating this and with Tayllor. And it says there's a big difference between someone organically being drawn to the same things you are versus someone who is trying to absorb your identity and try it on because they don't know who they are yet. Learn to discern the two. Now, growing up, I wish somebody would have said this to me, right? Growing up, I wish this was something that was in the forefront of my mind, because in hindsight, in the dynamics that I was in, a lot of this happened. It was a lot of someone liking qualities about you. So what is that saying?
Well, imitation is the best form of flattery.
Oh, there you go. I messed it up. Thank you, Mo. Yes, absolutely, right? I wish that I understood that. But growing up, in the friendships that I had, you would notice things like that, right? Like, oh, this person is doing this, and then this person is doing that. But it's like, oh, we're supposed to be alike, right? This is why we're best friends, right? Like, we have one mind. And no, you're supposed to be two individuals who connect regardless, right? You guys could be on polar opposites of how y'all think about things, but there's a level of love, there's a level of just something there that kind of brings y'all together, as opposed to necessarily being twins about everything, how you think, what you like to eat, what you want to do, how you talk. And I mean, I had this level of, actually, I had two friends. One, again, was middle school, and then I gained another one in high school, again, against my own rules, but and we literally talk the same. So, like, you could speak to both of us on the phone and you wouldn't know who was who. Like, we literally talked the same. We said the same words. It was just eerie. People thought we were related. Like, it was just that, just a lot. And what I didn't pick up was, in my mind, it was like, just like how Tayllor said, hey, you're my friends. If I'm going, we going together, right? If I'm going this way, we going together. Like, and so in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm helping you along. I'm just like, giving you a boost. I'm guiding, whatever the terminology, whatever I was saying to myself. But the reality situation was this particular person, a friend I met in high school, she didn't have a sense of self. So she was like, oh, you're going to college? Me too. But she never thought about college before I started talking about college, right? And them going to the same college as me. No worries. Wonderful. Oh, I'm going to be studying XYZ. Me too. Oh, okay. And again, not thinking about it, but then even her parents would be like, oh my, before so-and-so met you, she was not really like this. So I'm so happy. But they were grateful, because I guess they were seeing that I was influencing her in a positive way. But the reality is, she was literally following the same footsteps that I was following it. There was no individuality. And then again, as we progressed, as we got older, same thing. And I didn't really sit back to think about it. People had to tell me, like, hey, you don't think that's a little bit odd? Like, you don't think that, how she just said and did that thing? And it got to a point, things got messy. We don't even have to get into all that, but things got messy. There was a lot of lines that were crossed, things that were blurred. And as an adult now, I think, of course, because of those experiences, I can see things a little bit better. However, I still, and I'm saying this because up until the last friendship breakup I had earlier this year, some of this stuff was still going on, and I still was making excuses. I still was like, no, maybe it's not what I think it is, maybe. And a lot of this was still happening. And so I bring it up to say, one, to share with you all, but age doesn't necessarily mean we've learned anything. And sometimes we make the same mistakes when we are trying to develop friendships, because this was the first friendship I tried to develop in years. Like, I actively was like, I'm going to try to be a friend. And so in my mind, I thought that I would be different now because I've learned from those mistakes, because I was scarred from those breakups that I had prior. So, and I said, I didn't want to be that woman that was like, oh, forget that. I don't need no more friends, no new friends on my Drake, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, I don't want to entertain. I was also one of those people that didn't want to entertain female friendships anymore. I was just like, they too messy. I can't. I don't want to deal with it. It's too much. It's too messy. But I got to a point again in my healing. I said, no, right? We all need to be surrounded by feminine energy. We all need other women. We need each other. And so I said, let me try this again. And I found myself right back in that same hole that I was before. And that I experienced another breakup. And the friendship didn't even last that long, but it hurt. It hurt. It really hurt. And I'm sharing because I'm still, honestly, I think I'm still unpacking, to be honest. I still have my moments where I think about it and I'm like, ooh, you know, I say some words that aren't very nice. And then I have moments where I'm just like, you know, it's okay. You know, it ran its course and that's fine. But there's still a part of me that feels kind of dumb. You know, there's a part of me that still feels like, how did you let that happen again?
The lessons, they keep coming and they keep popping up until we actually learn something. And I've had that as well. I wanted to open the floor to see if there was anyone else, because I'm presenting the screen, I can't see everyone. If there's anyone else who wants to jump in and offer their thoughts on any of this. We've covered so much and we're not even through. Just your thoughts, your reactions, your experience, your lessons.
Who here has experienced, Tayllor, you can go to the next slide. But who here has experienced a friendship breakup?
I'll share. It was a breakup and then we reconnected. Ironically, my sister friend, as I call her, she introduced my husband and I. And, you know, something happened and the friendship dissolved. And it, like you said, it really, really hurt because it was like we were extremely, extremely close. And I was pregnant with my 13-year-old at the time. And I wanted her to be there at the baby shower, but being who I was like, nah, I'm not inviting her. This happened or whatever. She knew I was pregnant. She saw me and she was like, oh my God, Kai, you know, and we spin and I was like, yeah, no. And then after I had my son, she saw him. And then like maybe a year later, we met at a grocery store and she was like, I want you to come to my aunt's barbecue. And I'm like, And she apologized for everything that happened. And I was like, okay, you know, but it still took me a minute to say, all right, let me embrace you again. And then it was like, you know, I really miss my friend. And so we reconnected. She stayed in New York for a little while. And then, you know, she's in Maryland now, but we have that friendship again. And, you know, sometimes when you go through a breakup and if you happen to reconnect, sometimes it may not be the same. Even in some family ships, you know, that dynamic is not the same anymore. But for this particular sister friend and I, you know, I can call her up anytime she can call me up. And, you know, it's that friendship because I really miss my friend. I really miss my sister. You know what I mean? And going back to when you were talking about, someone mentioned when a friend calls you out, you know, your character flaws. The same friend and another friend, I was going through a relationship at the time and just, you know, I'm thinking, oh, everything is fine. I'm moving to the next level. And they had what you call like an intervention. But I thought I was just like blindsided. You know, I thought I was just coming to break bread, you know, with talking. And the next thing you know, is like, well, Kai. And whenever somebody calls me Kai, I know they're about to tell me about myself. And I'm like, oh, Lord, here we go. But those are the type of friends that you need. And it's not, for me at least, it wasn't done in a judgmental way. It was like, listen, we love you. You know, it's like, what are you doing? You know, and oftentimes we know, sorry, hold on for a second.
Okay. Okay. And I think that's an important part.
You know, that's the little one. That's the boss, right?
It's all right. Bring your whole self here. You a mama. Bring your whole self.
Yes, please.
So I have to. I'm losing my train of thought. But just in speaking, I apologize. I just lost my train of thought. But I think I was talking about the character flaws, and you know, when they tell you about yourself, it's in a place. It's in a loving. It's loving. You know, it's a place of, you know, I want you to think about what you're really doing, you know? And then oftentimes we already know, but it's just like, oh, you know, but when somebody brings it to you, it's just like, okay, now I have to really sit and I have to really think about what I am doing, you know? So I appreciate those friendships, you know, it's not fake, it's not phony, it's a place of love.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Kaida. And that's a fact. I think that's a piece of, for me, real friendships that tend to lead to friendship breakups is that piece of, I'm going to call you out. Like you messing up, sis. People don't want to hear that though. For me, if I love you, I'm going to tell you you're messing up. If I don't care, girl, do your thing. Right. And I don't think people understand that because, and again, when I was younger, it was more of those, oh, that thing is dumb, but girl, okay, girl, all right. And it's like, it's fun. You want to do it, then do it, as opposed to because you felt too scared, right? To be like, oh, I don't think that's a good idea. Oh, I think you're going to get in trouble. Oh, but as I get older now, please call me out. Tell me I'm dumb. Please. Okay. Like, because just like what you just said, Kaida, when you was in that relationship or whatever was going on with you, you knew you was messing up. You knew. But you ain't want to say it out loud. You needed somebody to tell you. And I'm also the same way. It's like, I know I'm being dumb. I know I'm being dumb. Say it out loud to me so I know I'm not crazy. Just say it out loud so that I can then be like, damn, if this person is out here seeing what I'm doing also, and I know this person loves me, then damn, it's going to make me sit and think a little bit better. Right. Think a little deeper. Think a little more. And I think that's appreciated. But the truth of the matter is everybody ain't built for that. Right? Some people don't want it. They don't want you to tell them they messing up. They just want you to co-sign.
Yeah. And there's moments where I've said, hey, I need to vent. I don't need feedback right now. And it took me a while to realize when I needed that, because I will be like, yo, I didn't need you to come. I'm just unloading. Can you be there? And asking, are you available for me to just, I need no feedback. Like it's with my parents, it's one of those things where I gotta be boundaries. I just need to vent. I'm just venting. And my friend who's in California, she'll just say, I need to vent. She'll text a whole bunch of stuff and I'll be like, bet. You just need to vent. You didn't want feedback at that time. And finding those boundaries are so important. So important.
Absolutely. Mo, I see your hand. Go ahead.
I want to extend to what I'm going to call you Kai because I can't pronounce your full name and I'm sorry. I know I'm not being serious. Okay. Yeah, what you just said is key. Like, you know, when your friends hold you accountable, like Sarita said in the chat, like it's the key to any healthy relationship, but also like extended it further. Like, at least for me, when I start a friendship, I ask that my friends, like, even when I do something that doesn't resonate with you, like personally, like if I do something that rubbed you the wrong way, like that you say something. I notice that sometimes people hold on to stuff because they want to preserve the friendship, but I'd rather have the challenging conversation now versus when things get hard and then you weaponize something that happened 6 months ago. And I'm like, shit, I didn't even know that was an issue ever brought to the table, right? So it's kind of like, let's, you know, I just, you know, whoever's in my life, you know, whether it be friend, partner, family member, if there's an issue or concern, bring it to the space. Even if things get a little rocky, let it rock and we can flow through. But if I don't know if I don't know if it's an issue, I'm going to keep engaging in that behavior because I don't know that doesn't work for you, right? So the friendship is not only supposed to serve Monique, it's other parties involved, but I think sometimes people don't share what they're feeling and they hold on to it. And that bothers me a lot. And I that's a fear of mine too. Like, you know, because I've had a couple of friends that's done that. And then when things went left, they're like, oh, remember that time you did this? And we went. And I'm like, shit, you had a list that you held on to for years? Nah, that's crazy.
Right, that's a fact. And I had a similar incident happen, kind of, but it didn't end up as good as yours did. Where again, that longtime friends, again, we stopped talking at 30. And I feel like at about 32, no, it had to be 33. That was my Jesus year. A lot of things happened that year. And I feel it was around then. But throughout the time, she did try to reach out and talk, but I was kind of like, I wasn't ready. My spirit was not, it just wasn't happening for me. But when we finally sat down and talked, I think it was the year my grandma passed. And again, you know, death does some things to you. And so I said, you know what? let me sit down with her and finally give her the space, right? Let her get whatever she need to get out. So we sat down and we spoke. And again, this ties into what you said, Mo. And my mind was already made up. I let her go in my heart. Like I prayed on it like so many different ways. And over the years, it felt right to me to let the relationship go. Mm-hmm. And so I said, I'm going to let her and give her what's that word that people love so much? What's that word? I can't remember the word. But anyway, I said, I'm going to let you share your piece. Get closure. There you go. Closure.
Cool. Yes, that one.
And so we sat down and we're talking, and then she's like, oh, over the years things have happened and I really needed you in my life. And I'm like, wow, that's, I didn't say I'm sorry, but I'm like, okay, I understand. But in my mind, I was always like, but you have the best friends, girl. Okay, whatever. And and then she started saying things like, oh, when we were friends, like she felt like she always had to be better. She felt that I held her to a standard she could never lived up to. But then she started saying things like, oh, just saying things of like, wow, you really was holding this on to certain things like this. You really held on to things that happened while we were even really young, right? Because I've known since I was in junior high. All these years, you held on to all these things and you never shared those things with me.
Right.
And I was so baffled. I was flabbergasted. I'm not going to hold you. I was so flabbergasted. And I think it also just added the final, I guess, trick for me, because it made me really see that how were you really my best friend? How were you really my sister? Because at that point, before that, she was my sister. Like she was closer to me, to me as a sister than my actual sister was. And how could you at this point really have genuinely been there with your whole heart in the way that I was for you when you were holding on to all these things?
Come on.
There's no way. There's no way. And then it made me really realize that all the things that people around me were saying were true. So many different people, and I mean different people, from family to people to men that I was dating, different points in my life, whoever interacted with us was like, oh, there's something more here. I think she might have a little resentment towards you, or I think she might be a little jealous. I think it might be a little bit of this and a little of that. And I refuse to see it because in my mind, I'm like, she's my sister. Why? Like, why? Like, why? And if she did, we would be able to discuss it, right? We would be able to work through it. And she was holding on to all this stuff. And for me, I couldn't take it. Like, to me, it was like, wow, this was it. This was it for me. Because you really, really, throughout these years, as I thought we were growing in our friendship, you were just like creating this list that who knows if you would have ever shared with me, and who knows how far that resentment would have built and went. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that was too deep for me. So I didn't really want to rekindle that friendship. We're cool now. I wish no one no harm. I see her around. Hey, girl. You know what I'm saying? And then I keep supporting.
Okay, and that's it. Mm-hmm.
That's it. Like, I have no ill will or no ill feelings, but it definitely was growth for me. Keisha, I see your hands, and I think Yana, I saw your hand as well.
Yes, I wanted to touch on what Tayllor was saying. She was talking about the friends breakup, which was very true because I experienced that a couple of years ago. And as of now, the person is reaching out, but I'm really at my distance because how she did it was something that I didn't agree to. And I would understood how I take things is, if you have something to say it outright. Don't have me chase you around trying to develop some type of conversation, hoping you to open up to say, okay, then why are you behaving in this way? And then to come out in a way that was like, but we could have talked about this so long ago, instead of you choosing what I think, and this is my opinion, a cowardly way of ghosting. That's one thing that is one of my pet peeves. Something that is like, do not ghost, because if you cannot outright say what you feel, then our relationship was not real. And I expressed that to her. I told her, I said, I thought our friendship was really enough for us to have a conversation to where I might be defensive, which is correct because you're calling me out on something. But I would have reflection to say, you know what, you're absolutely right about this regard. So, and I think I'm at peace with that. of my distance, because even though she's reaching out, liking pictures and stuff like that, I'm like, no, I don't agree with how you did it. But I also saw what people were telling me in the first place about you, where you are not, you're telling people to be open and free, but here you're not being free and open, and you're developing a mask of yourself, which is, whatever trauma you are experiencing, but don't put that on me. And the second point is, in speaking about the character flaws, I just recently had a good, I would say a half a day conversation with my best friend, and we were just catching up because she is an EMT, so she has a busy life, especially with the pandemic that was going on. I didn't see her, I didn't speak to her as much. So when we actually spoke to each other, she explained, she was just like, I couldn't tell you that I felt like you was always in a competition. She talked to everybody else, but never talked to me. And I said, but why you didn't feel like I couldn't receive it? Even though you may thought that I couldn't receive it, why you didn't bring it up in the manner that it should have brought up? And she couldn't really answer. And I had to school her. Because I am a therapist, I had to school her. I said, part of being open and vulnerable is being able to have a friendship that is able to speak on the flaws that we may have, that we may not be ready to hear, but you should be open enough to share if we are so-and-so best friends.
Right.
Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Oasis podcast. I hope you were able to find something that resonated with you on your journey. Don't forget to subscribe anywhere you listen to podcasts and YouTube. Rate us and leave us a review and comment on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and YouTube. Share your favorite episode and like us on Instagram and Facebook. If you have any questions, comments, want to be a guest, or any show ideas, contact us at ajaysoasis@gmail.com. That's AAYJAYSOASIS@gmail.com, or direct message us on Instagram and Facebook.